Hello, everybody. Please, we're starting in 1 minute. Okay, hello, good morning, and welcome in the name of Spanish. I'm working for the Spanish administration, and welcome to Alcalá de Henares. I hope you like the city and you like the environment here in Spain. And we are going with the session 5 that is called Adaptation to Changing Landscape of Fast Diseases. As you know, and we yesterday had very nice presentation about megatrends that are impacting the epidemiology of these fast diseases. Megatrends such as climate change, alteration of environment, loss of biodiversity, wars, instability, and human displacement, inequity, and prices crisis are problems that impact fast diseases. And that seems to be increasing with time. So adaptation to these megatrends is not an option anymore, it's a necessity. So we are exploring today some approaches to, through the two keynote speakers that we have in this session, two approaches or tools that could help to adapt or for this adaptation. The first keynote is Alexandre Hobeika. Dr. Alexandre Hobeika is a political scientist and sociologist specializing in governance and agriculture and health. He graduated from École Normale Supérieure in 2006 and earned his PhD in 2016 at the Higher School for Social Studies in Paris. He has been working as researcher at the French International Center for Agriculture Research for Development, CIRAD, since 2018. Focusing on the coordination of stakeholders and the science policy interface for the management of One Health issues in Europe, West Africa, and Southeast Asia. His recent research topics include antimicrobial resistance, COVID-19, African swine fever, among others. He also teaches in the French National School for Veterinary Services with master's and PhD students working on bovine tuberculosis and avian influenza. He is presenting a keynote that has the title of Designing the Science Policy Interface for Deep Prevention and Disease Management, How Social Science Can Help. Please, Dr. Alexander. Yeah, he's here. Welcome. Good morning. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me. It's a real pleasure to be here. Thanks for the organization also, for the wonderful work they have been doing. And thank you, Germán, for the presentation. Okay. I will build on what has been said yesterday afternoon in the three very nice presentations after lunch. My two key messages are these two ones. So first, I will preach that scientists, us basically, should engage more with policy and with institutional design, and then how to do it. Okay, we are dealing with animal health, animal diseases. We know the world is complex. It's been talked about several times before. And we are in an era of systemic risks. I won't go into much detail, but the world is very interconnected. There's big or small pockets of precariousness. Problems, viruses can have non-calculable, insurable consequences. Plus, society is there all the time. There's debate, there's contention all the time. I don't elaborate, you know. Then what to do for health in the world? Well, after COVID, there's been a flurry of PDFs. Everybody published a big PDF on what to do for the future to make things better. Either expert groups, either international organizations, either coalitions of powerful states. And more or less everybody agrees. More or less everybody says the same things. I've read this paper, we can make a discussion, but basically it boils down to a few principles. Everybody agrees that prevention is good. Prevention, preparedness and response is good. Collaboration between countries, between disciplines, between sectors. Science is good, and inclusion is good. Inclusion of marginalized groups, indigenous knowledge, etc. And it all fits under the umbrella of the One Health concept. I mean, I have a love-hate relationship with this diagram, which is at the same time nice, there's colors, but it doesn't really mean anything clear. That is, we put everything together and some cogs and some arrows and we're all happy. But what I want to underline here is that there's sectors and disciplines on the left-hand side, environment, human, animal, I think we agree on that, and on the right-hand side, society. We have to deal with that, and if we manage to function, it will be nice. The problem is what to do. I mean, how is going to implement One Health or invest in prevention? Are the states, are the heads of states thinking about prevention? No. I mean, we all know that they've moved on to wars, elections, anything other that is big, and they forgot that COVID ever existed, I suppose. The industry, I mean, there's of course some interest in the industry, but solving problems that don't exist yet is not a great business model, so I shouldn't count, or I wouldn't count on the industry to lead. The public doesn't have the necessary expertise, but some interest, which leaves us with basically scientists. Is it our job? I mean, we can have some inclination to do that. We have some interest in making the world better over the long term, that no problem happens. We have some form of academic freedom, and also the public expects things from us, that is, they don't trust anyone else to carry the common good, so they look at us. You might say, well, it's not my job, you know. So I would like to argue that maybe it kind of is, or it could be. The point I want to make here is that we shouldn't consider policy on the one hand, science on the other hand to be separate worlds, because that's not how policy works. And in many occasions, many discussions with colleagues, in many recent PDFs, I see this diagram of a nice circle to depict a policy cycle. That is nice steps with nice arrows between them, and it's a model that is rational. We identify a problem, we identify a set of solutions, we give evidence to policymakers. They think in their nice chair with an infinite time span what is the best solution. They take it, they implement it, they review and rinse and repeat. It's not realistic at all in most situations. This is a schematic representation that has been produced by political science in the 1940s, some time ago. In blue there, I show you a representation of a policy science model from the 70s, still quite old, which is slightly more realistic, that is called the garbage can model, which says that the production of policy is not a nice cycle where everybody is rational, but you put different ingredients, problems, solutions, decision makers, stakeholders into a bin, you shake, they fight, and at some point some things stick together and you have a policy. And if it works, that's good. If it doesn't work, you repeat. The point that I want to make here is that it's a mess and it's okay. You know, it's not going to be otherwise. Social science can do a bit more than saying that everything is a mess. We can put some order in describing what's happening. Like the schematic representation on the right, we can say that some people are more central, some others are more peripheral, everybody tries to push their solution. My point is that from the point of view of politicians, scientists are just a form of interest group or stakeholder group. There can be some specific mission given to scientists, but we as scientists are involved in policy, have been all the time, and it's okay. Science also has always been impure. If you look at the history of science, there's never been scientists just in their ivory tower producing evidence. So talking about policy, even politics, is okay. What defines science, however, is that it's collective. It's not, if you have someone in a cave saying, I'm making science, it's not a scientist, a guru, or hermit, what have you. But what I talk about science, when I talk about science, I mean community, us together. So that's it for my first part. In short, prevention needs the mobilization of us. If we want more prevention, we need more mobilization of us, and mobilization in institutional design and policy. Otherwise, we will have the discourse that we keep hearing, that we keep saying, and I quote really important people here, institutional design is too complicated for us. I'm quoting the chair of the IPCC, and well, I can elaborate, but that's a problem for me. I strongly and respectfully disagree. We keep saying that politicians never listen to us, but of course, if we don't include ourselves in the policy sphere, they will not listen to us. And the last one, my favorite, it's a seasoned colleague on food safety in low and middle income countries. I asked her what to do to solve this problem. She said, we should change all the politicians. Well, okay, but it's not going to work, not going to happen, and some others will take place. So, I mean, there's a contradiction there. So we need to go beyond these contradictions. The good news, in a way, is that we have some tools that we can leverage, that we can use to do that. I will give a few examples of what we can do as to work on the science policy interface. I will use this concept in a bit flexible manner. I will define science policy interface as the sets of relationship between the world of science on the one hand, the world of policy and stakeholders on the other hand, connections that are structured by instruments, mechanisms, fora like what we're doing here, and it's always under the scrutiny of the public to some extent. And you can use it at a global level, national and regional level, local level. So it's a useful concept to think about how to organize things and how to weigh on policies, sorry. I will give 3 examples quite quickly. The first one, at the international level. I've made an exercise with colleagues to think about what would be the pros and cons of setting up an IPCC for One Health. You know the IPCC, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. You hear about it at least every year, once a year, and they say that we're all doomed and the mean temperature is rising. It's been operating for almost 40 years, and it's a forum that is recognized as useful, legitimate, and that gives some power to the scientific community. So we can think, okay, if we need more power to scientists on One Health, is it useful to set up or to advocate for such an instrument? Okay, to make it happen, I would ideally follow a few principles. That is, be easy to set up, be without duplication with other institutions, be quite cheap to run, and have some benefits. And a possible easy structure would be to take OLEB, the One Health high-level expert panel that has been existing for a couple of years, and add to it a few extra capacities and policy. I don't go into detail there. The point that I want to stress out is that we have some frameworks to analyze what would be the pros and cons of such a structure. I'm presenting you a very simple framework to describe the functions of international organizations, but we can be applied to EUFMD, for instance. Four categories: knowledge synthesis, advocacy, policy design and implementation, and stakeholder engagement and coordination. These are some of the things that international organizations do in general. So we can see what such an international intergovernmental panel for One Health would do in these categories. I will go quite quickly. It would have some advantages in green, so it would structure the community, scientific community, identify research gaps, push for some research agenda items, raise public awareness, push One Health in international organizations. It could prescribe, evaluate policies, and it could link quite nicely with the ecosystem of One Health platforms that have been set up around the world, and it could be quite cheap to run. I mean, you might not know, but the IPCC costs like $10 million a year to run, so most of the cost is the scientist's salary, and it's just the secretariat and all that. So it's very cheap compared to other international organizations. Drawbacks, well, if you want more power, you have to negotiate with the member states, and then it gives more power to state institutions, politicians, so you have more freedom to say what you want. You risk disappointing the public. It's hard to implement and hard to negotiate a weight on policy and capacity building. It can be slow, and the landscape is not empty, it's not completely full, but it's somewhat crowded. So it can be good, it can be not good. I mean, it has to be seen. My point is that we have tools to identify what we want, solutions that we can propose, and to advocate for them. So this is not the panacea, but we can do it. Second example, on how to, I mean, we say we should include stakeholders, we should include marginalized groups, etc. But I think we need to include ourselves also in the policy conversations, and to do that, we can think about our institutions, how they are organized, how we work, and what we would like to make our life better and to have more weight. I'm going to talk very briefly about a study made with colleagues on, well, not all of us, but some of us, what we have called the epidemic intelligence community in Europe, that is experts in public health and veterinary public health state institutions. So the study was a qualitative one, trying to understand how the landscape of institutions is organized and what would make the colleagues happy. What do they want? It's a good question in social science to start with what makes you happy. You learn a lot of things. So they talked about their problems, many problems, and I'm giving you some results here. Their problems are a lot about data collection, data processing, validation, analysis, the capacities they have, the times they have, etc. And the fragmented institutional landscape makes things more difficult. What did they want? Did they want more automation, more centralization, more harmonization between policies, etc.? Not really. They wanted more networks between them, more data integration and interoperability, and some tools to automate their work, but to speed up some steps that they keep control on. That is, they work not as an industry, but as a network of craftspeople, and they like to keep it this way. They value a lot their professional autonomy because it allows them to think and to bring value. They just want to speed up some parts of the processes. So again, we have tools to identify what we as a community of professionals want, or some of us want, and to make recommendations on the institutional space. And third example, a bit more classically about how to engage with stakeholders. I will take an example of the state administration and hunters at the local level in France after, following the African swine fever outbreak in Belgium in 2018. So you have a map with the border, the center of the outbreak, and administrative areas that had been designated for active surveillance, the population of wild boars. It's a big area, and how you do active surveillance in the population over 150 kilometers with a low budget. Well, the administration thought, why not mobilize hunters? Hunters, and they had good reason to have this idea. They thought hunters, they like hunting, they like shooting wild boars, they know the forays, they know what a wild boar looks like. They're kind of organized, and like everybody, they could enjoy a little financial incentive. And it didn't work. And why it didn't work? There were many problems, I don't go into detail. The fact that, I made a little study asking hunters what you like. Okay, they're not a flat, homogeneous population with infinite time. Their time is very structured in terms of seasons of hunting. Hunting is a social event, at least there. They divide also the time of hunting and the time of paperwork. So if you ask them to fill in a form while they're in the forest, it doesn't make any sense for them. Then there is an economy of hunting. I mean, the wild boars are not supposed to belong to anyone, not to have a price, but still, the rental of the forest has a price over some period of time, and they kept talking about this. It was a big concern for them. And there was, in that case, a lot of political games within the Hunters Federation, sorry for the typo. And so the level of organization and commitment, collective commitment of the hunters in this was very uneven, and it was a problem. So again, same message. We can identify what the stakeholders want, but we need to take the time to do it. But making a qualitative study like this, it takes 1 month. I mean, okay, social science, we're sometimes a pain, and we say that everything is complicated, but still, I mean, we can work together efficiently and cheaply enough. Conclusive words. We have been saying a lot that we need to engage with stakeholders, do more prevention. I think now is the time to actually do it. It's hard, but if we don't do it, no one else will. It's hard because it's complicated. No one else knows how to do it. But we can if we do it together, and we can, I don't know if we can change the world, but at least we can make very much better recommendations. I mean, just as a concrete hint at what we can do, just read, as you do, the papers we make. And I've been reading a lot of papers on food safety recently. They all conclude that there's many pathogens, and recommendations are that laws and regulations should be enforced. We can do much better than this. There's a huge margin of improvement. So I want to thank the many colleagues who have taken part in these studies, and I want to thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And I think there is time for one question for the audience, or at the end. Okay, so at the end we received some questions. So we are welcoming in the stage Dr. Thibaud Porphyre, an ecologist by training. He received his PhD in epidemiology in 2008 from Massey University in New Zealand. After several postdoctoral fellowships at CIRAC in French West Indies and at the Royal Veterinary College in London, he joined the University of Edinburgh in 2011, where he worked as a researcher at the Scottish Government-funded Centre of Expertise on Animal Disease Outbreaks. Since November 2020, he is the head of the IDES Lyon Industrial Chair in Veterinary Public Health at Vet AgroSoup in Lyon, France. His work focuses on risk evaluation, infectious diseases modeling, and the implementation of the One Health approach to support decision-making for managing complex health problems in animal populations. He's also the course coordinator of International Elective Program One Health, Managing Health Populations in the University of Claude Bernard Lyon. Thank you for being here, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for the introduction. And I think it's I wanted to thank also very much my colleague that cover a lot of my talks, and at least a lot of the source materials that I didn't want to cover because it was too complicated and make it too long. So thank you very much. Yeah. So I had struggled, to be honest, talking to you. When I saw the abstract and the description of the theme of these open sessions, there was it was quite interesting, and I had to put in the front and identified so the great opportunity to public and private stakeholders in the veterinary domain to strengthen their knowledge and skill necessary to adapt and respond swiftly to the dynamic disease landscape. When I read that sentence, I was like, okay, that's broad. At least I can recognize the word knowledge and adapt and respond. And it's good, I'm a modeler. And so I thought it's at least we're coherent. We can see that modeling is a best tool to develop and plan response. And I think a lot of people in this room that presented yesterday and today various different models of different shape and forms will acknowledge my point of view here. Models are very good to highlight a dynamism of disease spread, test the what-if scenarios to account for and explore the impact of uncertainties, to project ahead, and to estimate resources. What is great also is to be able to integrate heterogeneities, either by movement, either global movement of people or animals, the change of temperature or environmental conditions that will affect vectors, for example, or other behaviors. We also can integrate movement pattern of winds that will influence how vectors can be carried in long distances. So it's great. It's a great tool to integrate all those heterogeneities. However, when you read more in detail that sentence, you had dynamic disease landscapes. And when I come to that part, I was very much confused. What is a dynamic disease landscape and who is adapting? So, and I was starting, because I spent 20 years working in the science policy interface, that I need to talk about policies and how model can be interacting with policies. And then I saw the talk from my colleagues, and I say, thank you. I don't have to do that. So I can put my head and talk more about something that really I care about, is the ecology and the human decision related to all those changes and how to integrate that into models. So for once, I will talk a lot about integrating and ecology and social science, but I also have a love-hate relationship with the concept of One Health. So I do love the One Health ethos and values. These graphics, I do also have some issues with it. So you're not going to see it, but it's very much within that One Health space. So why do I like into One Health is that we know that ecology and humans are related. We know there's a whole cycles of disease spread within populations, and that those diseases may spread out into spillovers into human population, livestock population, and livestock in human populations. So there's a lot of cycles and complexities that can circulate and better understand the flow of virus or pathogens, will better understand and prepare us for disease or better respond to those diseases. However, when we model those things, usually, and again, I'm not saying something very new, is that pathogen affect the host fitness and then impact the population dynamics. Most of the models that we developed to develop our response plan or policies are in that concept that you get an introduction of disease that will affect the population, we need to deal with it. The problem is that in natural population and sometimes in domestic populations, you have a feedback, meaning that the host population dynamics will affect the success of pathogen introduction or persistence. And that is affecting quite a lot of how we can future-proof our response plan. As an example, we can see that climate change or climate can impact resource and that impact then vital rates of natural populations. And therefore, those changes will lead to population level response. So if you change this climate by global warming, you will have some change in how the population will behave phase two and how it will organize and the dynamic of it. For example, here's the great teat. They looked at those birds feeding on some beach and caterpillars, and depending if it's summer or winter, will modify their laying dates and their survival rate because of those relationships that may change with temperature. And I will come back to you on that in more detail in more disease-related questions. So in terms of models, when we develop a models, the first one we are talking about, and I think in most of the models we saw yesterday, it was in that concept, is that we have a constant fecundity rate, we've got constant everything. And basically, we are only looking at the dynamism of constant vital rates, which is very good. It's simple, it's easy to track, it's easy to model. And usually it's by design, but also it's because there's a lot of lack of data and knowledge on how the population behave. And that creates some restrictions for us to future-proof our plans, future-proof, or at least to predict ahead what our disease can evolve and how the dynamics in the long term. Switching gear a little bit is that transboundary animal disease, or TADs, are the interface between wildlife and human decision process. And so you have to be very careful when you're focusing one. When you're talking about TADs, we also need to look at how people behave and adapt to the different challenges they're facing. And especially farmers will make decisions every single day related to trade, related to protection of their livestock and livelihood, and how they treat their animals. Do they vaccinate or not? Do they put antibiotics or not, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a lot of decision that needs to be done every day. And I will bounce on a sentence that, a phrase that, a quote that my dear esteemed colleague yesterday mentioned, is that the success comes from ownership of communities of control strategies, and not only understand the risk of FMD, but also the value of its control, which I completely agree with. So I'm not criticizing in any single moment that statement. The only thing that will complement is that this assumes that the value is only economical and rational. And there's a lot of cultural and social factors that may also be involved, and that human action is not based on what they know about the risk, but how they perceive it and how they believe about it. And that is create another challenge for modeling disease spread. It's not their status that is important, it's their beliefs of their status that is important in their action. And integrating that in the model is complicated, but important. We've seen with COVID that it was a massive impact on how our recommendations for disease control and prevention were efficient or not. As an example, and thank you again for mentioning farmers, hunters, and in wild boar for control for African swine fever. We've done a small study in France at the cross-border of Italy and France to look at actually what are the various social aspects and that will impact the efficiency and efficacy of surveillance system in wild boar hunters, but also farmers. And it is everything but economic. Yes, they do have some economic values, but it's the fear of their loss, the fear, social, legal and consequences that are important. There is a willingness, in general, of farmers and hunters to report suspected case, but there's a conflict between recommendations, or at least the conception of disease traits and their relation with nature and their activities. So all of that, trade-offs, create some issues that we need to account when we're doing some models. So what can we do and how can, to go from observation of the impact of those megatrends to develop modeling framework to test how strategies are impacting and future-proof them. So obviously, we could do a big mechanicals with component and interrelated, involving epi-economical approaches and eco-epidemiological approaches. I like those big words. They can be interacted, and we should interact them. We should integrate them together. It's hard. So I'm going to only give you some example of some components of it, or at least how we dealt with epi-economical approach and how we dealt with eco-epidemiological approach. What I mean by eco-epidemiological is the link between ecology and epidemiology. Okay. So starting with the ecology of it. So we're talking about fast diseases, the importance of population structure and population dynamics, the link with environment, the link with temperature, the link with food supply. All of that can be integrated with models, and which is an example of here South African host sickness in zebra in South Africa, to look at how the dynamic of vectors will linked with the dynamic of natural host populations to understand how disease or African host sickness can persist in population and not in others. Here's an example at the Kruger National Park where it persists at low level, but nobody managed to understand why it's persisted for so long period of time, while it's all the adults are, are immune, they are not dying, and there's a dynamic that can be developed that could not explain epidemiologically the low level persistence. But when we put all of that together with the dynamics, with the pulse of birth, with the link with feed supplies, you're starting to create some dynamics between the vectors and the populations, and you can start to understand the link of circulation between populations and the survival of the low period to the high period. And that will show that we do have a low level circulations in the wild population that can be explained just by the fact that the birth of newborn zebra. So if we look at horse, thanks. So if we look at the African swine fever, we've done a similar approach, but we also added another layers, adding the seasonality of not only the birth and the contact patterns with the roots. Not only we added the transmission routes with carcasses decaying, we also put the seasonality of hunting. And we look at what is the risk patterns, the route of transmission that the most important, depending of time of introduction and so on. And we saw there's the spread of disease will very much relate if we manage to make it work. No. This one. If you look at the gray line, you get a crossing between gray lines where the transmission route related to carcass, feeding on carcass, and the other, which is direct contact. And we see the importance of each route depend of time, depend of behavior, depend of introduction of the time of introductions. So it is very much related. It does have a dynamics, and also it will impact on how efficient our disease control program will be. But again, it's not future-proofing. This is model also based on 40 years knowledge and longitudinal data on wild boar populations. And with those kind of data, we also discovered that when you've got a high icon production, you will make the pulse of birth earlier and with a higher proportion of fecundities. And so the change of females and how the new piglets are born and when they are born will affect our population and the success of virus in a population. So we look at the impact of global warming in this kind of population. Obviously, you will have, therefore, a balance between food-mediated indirect effect versus the direct effect of climate. And we identified actually the spread in a close population of wild boar will the risk of disease spread will be reduced with climate change, which not often a message that you hear when we talk about climate change. We always say it's doom. We are all being plagued with diseases, but that depends on the disease system we are studying. And so we have to be very careful to, before announcing that doom and gloom, we have to make sure that the disease system will respond and we have a good understanding of how the behavior of the natural population will be in the future. Moving on to human diseases, again, it's quite, as I mentioned before, it's very complicated to integrate process, beliefs and perception of cost, of risk. So there's, and how can we integrate that in models? So we use the fact that, okay, we get the interaction between economics and networks, and we know that farmers, the animal movement network emerge from economic decision and beliefs on risk. And so we focus on that question on trade and try to find a ways to better understand how farmers or animal trader will behave relative to those two, about risk, about economic benefits, and also their beliefs. So to do that, we developed a meta-population disease model integrated into an experimental asset market together with economists, behavioral economists, I must say, because they are very touchy about that. And we look at how people buy and sell animals over several periods of time in a single closed book continuous double action market. They asked me to put these kind of things. And so it's, what is interesting with this kind of games is that we can collect information of economic gain together with the participant beliefs on risk. Do they think they're infected? Do they think the rest of the market is infected at what type of level? And obviously, we can follow it how the disease is spreading. What is interesting is that when we compare with our theoretical models where, trading, the volume of trades on average per participant is constant, or even when it changes over time following the volume that we observe in the experiment, we see that we overestimate the risk. We overestimate the prevalence. What does that mean? It only means that perception of risk will create some individual level response to trade, and that will have an impact. Sometimes it will reduce, sometimes it might increase the risk of diseases. But we need to account for those perceptions to make sure that our future, our response plan and what we recommend will be efficient enough and appropriate enough without creating too much burden to the farmers, or maybe not enough efficiencies, and we'll explain a silent circulation of diseases. My conclusion remarks. Good timing. Well done. So in terms of key remarks is importance of data. We all know that data is key. Again, ecological data. To see the future, we need to know well the past. And all the data that and models are based on at least 20 years of population monitoring. In terms of the wild boar, it was 40 years of monitoring a single wild boar population. That needs a long-term commitment to better understand dynamic and strategic adaptations. It needs commitment for money, but people also on the ground, capturing, trapping those wild boar, marking them, following year over year over year. But it is very beneficial once you get these information. It's very important to better understand how our population, natural population, will behave in the future. Again, cross-sectional studies are limited, are great to gather initial informations, but to gather required vital rates on populations are limited, and we need to have a long-term development of those kind of strategies to follow populations in order to be able to inform the communities on those kind of things. And again, for modeling, the role of human decision, I just would like to say that a lot of models have been developed to model decision process, but all based on theories, and theories are great. I'm not saying anything else. They are good, they're exploratory, we can develop a lot of hypotheses, but at some point we need data to validate them, and we try to develop that point. And my last point, before I'm getting kicked out, is that, again, transdisciplinary, we need a transdisciplinary approach and not only multidisciplinary approach. We should not say, oh, you social scientists, you do that, we are listening to you, and we do our things elsewhere, okay? We are not listening or even a conversation. We need to not work on silos, but involve them in a process, involve them in a work together to see how we can implement their concept into our models so that they are more efficient and more useful for the future. And I will thank you, everybody, founders and people involved in the studies, and thank you.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation. Now it's time we have 5 minutes for receiving some questions from the audience to the keynotes. Please, keynote speakers, comes to the table. Thank you. Question there?
Oh, wow. That was quick.
Thank you. Clara Saville from the Animal Plant Health Agency in the UK, and I have a question for Alexandre. Very excited about the idea of an IPCC for One Health, and I think we can learn lessons from what has just happened in the AMR world, in that a panel equivalent to the IPCC has just been agreed at the high-level meeting in New York just a few weeks ago. That was quite a long journey. It took 2 high-level meetings in New York. The idea was first proposed in 2019, and then a lot of work went on behind the scenes to get UK government support and subsequently EU support for the funding. And it was strong champions with Dame Sally Davis really leading that, and Christine Middlemas has been very involved as well, our CVO. And so I just wondered what you thought the steps were to get there, the timeline, and where that leadership, that really strong leadership, might come from. Thank you.
Should I? Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Of course, I have no idea about the future. I agree with you. It's complex processes. You said it took a long time for AMR, but it can take much longer for anything to happen with agreements of member states at the international level. So I think it's been quite quick for AMR. There's several discussions about setting up such panels in different fields. So one for chemicals, for instance, has been going on for almost 15 years, and there's been ups and downs and always bumps on the road. I'm not sure there's a consensus yet about the idea that such an instrument would be the best solution. I think we're still experimenting with what OLEP can do these days. So a small expert group, but with some freedom and a lot of productivity. I think it's working quite well for now. I think we have to see, or we have to just say what we think. I mean, and where traction can come from, at least for sure from the states that are pushing for One Health, but there's still, ideologically some obstacles to lift if one wants to move further. Many countries, low and middle income countries, are not yet convinced that it's not rich countries wanting to do things for themselves. But the discussion is going on. I mean, there's the development of One Health platforms in Africa, in Asia, everywhere is interesting. And if many countries are convinced that it's a good form, maybe it will be also a good argument to say, look, this works and we're organized, and if we have something above that is more institutionalized, it can work. I leave it at that for now.
I think we don't have much time for more questions. I don't know if there's short question, last one for the keynotes. Yes, please. We don't have much time.
I'm Germán. I'm a veterinary practitioner, and there is no, maybe the only one in the assembly. But I wanted to ask to Thibaud and Alexandre. There is very few link between you scientists, that's my feeling, very few link between you and vet practitioner in your surveillance network. What do you think of it? I think that in the future, with a diagnostic support application, vet will be able to make clinical suspicion of emerging disease. Would you be interested in it?
So, yeah, we're going to make it short. As a member of a vet school, it's very important to involve the vet clinicians. We do work a lot with vet clinicians of other things, on diagnostic and on surveillance. I didn't show it, again, in my presentations, but there's definitely something that needs to be done to get involved more with the groupment, GDS in France, or with clinicians. It is something important that needs to be looked at more in details, and there's so many things to do, so there's just a matter of time.
So thank you very much. We are moving on to the next phase of this session. It's the panel discussion, and for that we would like to welcome Valentín Almanza de Lara, CVO of Spanish Veterinary Authority. And okay.
Thank you.
Oh, you can stay. We were expecting another participant in this panel, but it's not here. So, good morning. I will address two questions. One question first for Valentín is so we have this point of view from the policy making side. So the complexity of interaction between. Oh, Henry, nice to meet you. Yes. So Henry is here. Henry is working for the Netherlands Office of Veterinary Services, and well, he's here also for the panel discussion. Thank you, Henry, for joining us. So the first question then is for Valentín. The complexity of interaction between megatrends and fact diseases make it impossible to manage disease risk at national or regional level, even regional level. In your opinion, how can international collaboration and collective actions, including policy, strengthen to mitigate the risk associated to the introduction and spread of these fast diseases?
Well, I don't know if it's working. Yeah, I think yes. It's working, eh? The micro? Okay. Yeah. Well, as far as we have no many time, I will try to be direct and quick. Says that the first keynote, it was a little provocative in respect to key managers, so I will answer a little to this keynote. First, what we need is information about what could happen. We don't need information about what happened in the past. This is the most important issue we want from science and from the international organizations. Information about what could happen. We need it. Secondly, we need knowledge, but practical one. We need knowledge. We don't need 300 pages scientific advice. We need at least 2 pages of summary conclusions, because these are the 2 pages we are going to use as risk managers. And third, we need build spaces for exchange information in a safe and transparent way between member states, between countries, between CBOs. We don't need in these meetings, international meetings, thousands of labs, thousands of international experts. We need meetings between governments, between CBOs, let me say, to exchange information, to share our opinions, and create trust. This is the only way to exchange information in a good way. When you create trust in these spaces, you are able to exchange information. Otherwise, nobody will explain what's happening in their country. Because if they explain what's happening in their country and immediately the other country close the border, nobody will say anything. So we need these spaces of trust, spaces where we can exchange information in a safe way. But these spaces must be especially built for members, governments, and risk managers. We don't need their, I don't know, science, we don't need their OAE or FMND. Yeah, they put the table, but that's it. And they put the cover, but nothing more. So that's my opinion. I'm sorry if I'm a little provocative, but I think sometimes it's needed.
No, I think, Valentin, thank you very much.
And the last one, risk management is a little more than science. It's a little more than science. It's a little more than science. Science is important, but it's not the only thing. We need to take account.
Well, I fully agree with that, because in the risk management, you also incorporate the societal parts of that. But I would like to underpin, and Valentina already mentioned that science is the basis. And I know there are discussions in society that science is also just a meaning or something like that. But for policymakers and for us, it is really a very valuable, data-driven activity where we build upon. So don't underestimate the value of yourself, of the scientists, because we need it to underpin our policy and to make good decisions that hold for the future.
I don't know if, thank you very much, Valentin and Henry. I think it was clear, the response.
Can I bounce?
Yeah,
So just for clarification, because you say you don't need science, but you need science is the basis of everything. It's those conflictual message that doesn't help to create a safe, trustworthy flow of information between science and policies. You need to it's again, the space between science and policies is based on trust and is based on respect of each other. It is difficult to find partners that listen to science, and it is also difficult for policymakers to find good partners to discuss and exchange information. So it is important for to clarify those things.
Yeah, no, of course we need science. And we need to take, we try to take our decision based on science. Of course, yes. The problem is sometimes we don't have the science we need. That's my point. And this is one of my best, this is one of the discussion I prefer, the relation between science and risk managers. Because my feeling, and it's a feeling, is that I normally do not have the science I need. That's it. So I am not saying I don't need science. I need science, but science that I can use.
I think focusing.
That's the point. So I am not saying I do not need science.
So research focus on real problems, real life is what they need.
That's it.
That's it. The message. It's not that science is not necessary. It's just that
clarify.
science should focus their objectives on real world problems.
Yeah, to put an example, and I'm sorry if I am. No, he works for me. So.
No, for both.
So now, to put an example, perhaps it's too radical, but to put an example, as you know, we have 2 years ago sheeppox in Spain. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, sheeppox in Spain. We were obliged to go to my grandfather's veterinarian books. That's it. Because we tried to find actual science, and we didn't find it. This is the things I am saying. I know it's difficult to try to cover all the diseases in the world. And this is my first point. We need to know what could happen to be prepared. This is, again, what science can give us. That's it. But of course, science is needed, and we need science, and we will use science.
Well, and to add on that, to give an example, I saw a lot of research proposals for improvement of PCRs. And then when you look at the benefit of that, you see a shortage of the diagnostic time with 5 minutes or half an hour. What I'm interested in is, and if you look at the whole disease channel by the first detection and then the diagnosis, 5 minutes is nothing. I'm more interested in how can we engage this farmer or the veterinarian to really notify the disease to the government. And I think there social science can have a huge impact. And I think that is also the science we use. How can we improve the total time of detection and not only your diagnostic time of detection?
So the first question has been very long discussion. So we are on time, so I don't know if there is time for another, or maybe we can finish, Nadia? Yeah, one question more? Yeah, one more. Okay, we'll go with the second one, that is another interesting topic. Increased investment in research and science policy interface is expected to help to counteract the negative effect of ecosystem destabilization, which is related to emerging outbreaks of fast diseases. And the question is, how can we promote this investment in a funding limited environment that you are living today? I mean, it's another easy question. I don't know.
No, I am prepared to pay. Sorry. I am prepared to pay for this. I have money, and I paid for this. But again, I am ready to pay for, let me use this word, practical science. I know practical science needs a basic science before, or a basic research before. I know. But I am not so prepared to pay that, because what I need is result. So I am ready. I am paying. I am ready to pay. I am paying every year, every day, for this what I call practical science. I am ready. There's no problem for the government to pay for that. We will find money. The problem is how we pay this basic science. We need before build this practical science, and this is more complex. And I'm sure I don't see the governments ready to pay this kind of basic science that we need before this practical one we are using. And that's the main. For me, this is the main problem.
The problem is not to be the money, but it's this relationship between policymakers and scientist community, just to make an agreement on what is needed from that side, from the side that are using this.
But I like but I do agree. Okay, I see the conflict on what you're saying again. You want to know what could happen, but you don't want to fund the basic research that will let you to answer the question. So it's a bit conflictual what you just say, is that you want what could happen, but you don't want to give money to answer your question.
No, exactly. I don't want.
That's
No, not exactly. No. The problem is that we have a limited budget. It's clear. My first destination of the budget is to support our service and our farmers, of course. And that's it. It's other ministry in Spain, at least, who pays science. And it's other ministry who pays basic science. It's not agricultural ministry. It's clear. It's clear. Yeah, in Spain, this is the way. There is a specific ministry to pay basic science and to develop basic science. No agricultural ministry, not veterinary services. What veterinary services or agricultural ministry is ready to pay is for practical science. Because the other part of the science, the basic one, which is needed, I know it's needed, because if you don't have a basic science, a basic research, you cannot develop after this practical research or this practical science. This is the part we are ready to pay, because this is clear for us. But the rest, the basic science, which is before that, must be paid for others. In my opinion, in Spain, there is a specific ministry to pay which is related to science. And the name of the ministry is science. This is the one who must pay this basic science. So it's with these guys which we must speak with. That's it. That, at least in Spain, perhaps in other members or in other countries could be another solution. So that's it. Don't ask me money for make basic science. I'm not ready to pay that.
Any other comments from?
Same in the Netherlands, yes.
Yeah, there's a hand raiser.
Hi, thanks, Germán. So, good morning once again. Yeah, so I have a conflict with what the CVO Spain is saying, and I think I quite agree with Thibaud. Yeah, I know your focus is more of translational science, but there is a thin line between clinical research and clinical practice. Where you're coming from is from the angle of clinical practice. That's the end game. But the basic science is important in clinical research, because whatever you see in clinical practice is a product of clinical research, where majority of us belong to. So there's a need for governments to invest in clinical research. But my question to you, CVO, sir, is the component of trust, which you did say, and I quite agree with you. My center in Africa, for example, we've been battling with funding from EU. We apply for several calls by the EU. Nigeria, to be precise, oftentimes get kicked out. And I was privileged to attend a virtual meeting. I don't know if it was a mistake from the commentator, but the person did say that the issue of trusts is lacking for most African countries. How then can the Global South be trusted with funds that you are not willing to release? Then, to the CVO Netherlands, very important, you said something about farmers, disease notification. I will just want to buy from your idea and ask Alex. Incentives to farmers, is that a very important social tool to enhance disease notification, especially in resource-poor countries of the world? Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we have to close the session. And we could be discussing IC for days, at least. I think the policy science interface should be promoted more debate and discussion, I see. So maybe that is one way that we could explore, just to open floors where decision makers and scientists could, not at national, only at national level, but regional level, etc., just to try to approach these two, because it seems that the money is in one side and the ideas is in the other, and to put all this together to get mutually beneficial things is the objective. Okay, thank you very much, and that's it.
Okay, thank you. Good morning again, everyone. So we will proceed. My name is Karima Wali. I work for UFMD. Thank you. So I work for UFMD as a risk management specialist. I'm leading the risk monitoring action area for UFMD. And I will have the pleasure to moderate this session. So thank you again. Since the beginning of this UFMD open sessions, we are really having extremely amazing presentations and discussion, and this last panel discussion was one of them. And of course, since the open session, we had many fast global updates. And as you know, UFMD is working on multiple fast diseases. And here we will have a Rift Valley Fever global update. And it's one of the 2 priority fast diseases of UFMD. Understanding the global situation of Rift Valley Fever is really critical to our work in this field in order for having appropriate actions and activities to be implemented. So thank you again. Without too much delay, I will give the floor to Giovanni. We'll present him. Giovanni Savini, of course, is the head of the Public Health Laboratory at Istituto Profilattico Sperimentale di Abruzzo e di Molise in Teramo. He's veterinarian by training with a PhD in epidemiology. And of course, Giovanni, you focus on vector-borne viral diseases affecting animals and public health, including Rift Valley fever and West Nile virus. Since 2023, you are leading European reference laboratory for Rift Valley fever. So thank you for joining us. You have 20 minutes for your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nadia. And good morning to everyone. And I'd like to thank the organizer to give me this opportunity to talk about Rift Valley fever. Probably most of you knows me because of Blue Tongue, but the world is changed. So, global update and 2022-2024. This is my talk. Well, that's a brief summary of what are the topics I will tackle. The first one, I will give you an insight on Rift Valley virus and the disease. Then I will go through the global situation in 2022, between 2022 and 2024, giving a brief description of the outbreaks, dividing Africa in Western African countries and Eastern African countries. Then I will go through possible similarities and differences between the 2 areas regarding the Rift Valley fever outbreaks. Some questions not yet answered, and I'll conclude with the risk of introduction of Rift Valley fever into Europe, and then conclusions. So, starting with the definition, what is the Rift Valley fever? Rift Valley fever is an arthropod-borne viral zoonosis. Primarily affects animals, but also it has the capability of infecting humans. Infection can cause severe disease, both in humans and animals. The disease also results in significant economic losses due to the death, abortion among the Rift Valley fever infected livestock. So it's a zoonosis, but it can cause a lot of problems also in livestock. So in 2016, this virus was reclassified by the ICTV, and it was put into the Bunia viralis order. Then the family is Phenviviridae, genus Phlebovirus, and the species is called Rift Valley fever Phlebovirus. The characteristic of the virus is spherical enveloped virus, 120 nanometers, and it has 2 surface glycoproteins, very important for the immunogenic purpose, GN and GC. Another important characteristic of this virus is the genome. It is a segmented genome composed by 3 segments: large, medium, and small. Segmented genomes sometimes is associated with the changing, with the reassortment. However, this virus seems to be stable, both genetically and antigenically. The maximum diversity among the circulation strains limited to 4% concerning the segment L and segment S, and 5% concerning segment M. No, I mean, very few cases of reassortment have been observed, and little evidence of recombination. So it means that it's a very stable virus, although it has a segmented genome. Passing through to the transmission, the life cycle of this virus, starting with infected eggs laid by infected mosquitoes. So they can stay for a very long time, just quiescent. Then after a heavy rain, they can lay, giving rise to infected adult mosquitoes, which start the life cycle, infecting ruminants, infecting camelids, and then the cycle started, and the spread of this virus could be done by Culex species, Mansonia species of mosquitoes, whereas probably the survival of the maintenance cycle, the responsible of the maintenance cycle are the species of Aedes. Then when the infected ruminants have been infected and Culex spread the infection, we can have the infection in humans. Infection in humans can be through mosquitoes bites, but also and probably principally, mainly, through the contact, people contacting infected animal through butchery or slaughtering and so on. We will see later on. So chronologically speaking, we have first infected mosquitoes, then livestock cases, 6-8 weeks before having human cases. So mosquitoes, livestock, human cases. When an animal is infected by the virus, we might have severe clinical signs, but also mild clinical signs, depending on host, species, age, stage of reproduction, level of challenge, immunity, etc. So we may have a peracute, acute, inapparent forms, or non-specific signs. These symptoms are characterized by fever, inappetence, lethargy, but icterus. The mortality and abortion can be varied, but the most susceptible species appear to be sheep. Then abortion storm is the characteristic of this virus. When in the field we have these many cases of abortion, we have to suspect the presence of the Rift Valley fever. But sometimes the abortion is the only manifestation of this virus. But also, we might have many cases overlooked and not diagnosed. And sometimes human cases are detected first. This depending on the surveillance plan put in place in the country. A particular mention is camelids. Why? Because is recently, with the outbreaks in Western Africa countries, we have seen that camelids can play a very important role, epidemiologically speaking. Being infected by this virus, suffering abortions like ruminants, abortions, severe clinical signs, but also they may play also an important role in spreading the infection. And there was a case of the Mauritanian outbreaks in 2022. Going to humans, the incubation periods can be up to 6 days, and then most of the infection occurs asymptomatically. However, we may have like flu-like symptoms with myalgia, joint pain in the joint, and recovery normally occurs in 4-7 days. Then, but we might have complications. We might have severe complication in a very low percentage of cases. 1% of cases can lead to hemorrhagic fever with high mortality, but also in 1 or 2% of cases we may have retinal vasculitis with blindness, and also 1%, less than 1% of cases we may have encephalitis. So a little bit of history of this virus. It appears probably in the end of the 19th century, 1880, in the eastern area of Africa. And the emergence probably was associated to the introduction of European breed of livestock into Eastern Africa. And then from Eastern Africa, moved to the Southern Africa in the 50s, then in the Western Africa in the 80s, in the 70s in the Egypt, and in the 90s in Madagascar, and then in 2000 in Peninsula Arabica. So let's have a look of the cases between 2022 and 2024. In 2022, cases were reported in Mauritania, and in talking about Western countries, Western area, and in Rwanda, Burundi, and Uganda in Eastern area. In 2023, we had outbreaks reported in Uganda and in the island of Comoros, and in 2024 in Rwanda, Uganda, and Kenya. So because of this particular situation, I divided my talk in two different, talking about the two different areas, Western African countries and Eastern African countries. Because we noticed that there could be some differences between how the virus behaves in these two different settings. In West Africa, particularly in Mauritania and Senegal, well, everything started following the construction of a dam on the Senegal River in 87, 88. And after this construction, we had the first outbreaks occurring in this area, resulting in severe death of human fatalities, 220 human fatalities. And since that time, the Rift Valley fever virus circulated constantly in Mauritania, causing severe outbreaks with fatalities. You see in 1987, 2010, and so on, and most recently in 2022. Conversely, in Senegal, the virus, although circulating, doesn't cause any or very sporadic cases in this country. Talking about the outbreaks in Mauritania, the outbreak was characterized by high mortality rate, especially in young animals, young sheep and goats, and also a very high incidence of abortion in small ruminant. We had about 161 samples from small ruminants, 5 from cattle, resulting positive to the laboratory tests. And camels also, as said before, were involved in these outbreaks, as in previous outbreaks in Mauritania. We had about 59 camel fatalities were observed, and with that including abortion cases, were observed many cases of abortion as well. And out of 640 camel samples, 133 samples were positive to RT-PCR in the lab. The vectors responsible for this infection were found mainly 3 species, Aedes vexans, Mansonia uniformis, and Culex quinquefasciatus. In humans, we have 53 confirmed cases and 24 people dying because of Rift Valley fever infection. Compared to the outbreaks occurring in the 2020, you see that we can see that the infection spread northward, and this was probably due to the animal movement, especially particular camel movement. Going to Eastern African countries, we have seen before that Eastern African countries are the original home of the Rift Valley fever in the late 80s. And why? Because probably this region became endemic. Why? Because probably it has a unique ecosystem which allowed the virus to become endemic. In fact, the region is a tableland, 800 meters, and above the sea level, and they got clay soils that drained very slowly, and apart from dense bushes and vegetation. But also, more critically, we have a severe and quite often extreme weather condition resulting in flooding, which are the proper habitat and for proliferation of vector populations. So in Rwanda, 2022, we had an outbreak. First in the livestock, and causing more than 1,000 abortions and more than 500 animals dying, ruminants dying because of Rift Valley fever infection. And also in 2022, human beings were involved in this outbreak with 22 fatalities. Males were most often infected, and the case fatality rate was high, up to 30%. Then in Rwanda reappeared Rift Valley fever in 2024, in August, with 24 positive cases, but because of vaccination, the outbreak was not so severe as the previous one. In Burundi, Rift Valley fever virus appeared for the first time in 2022, and causing a lot of problems in the livestock, with more than 400 animals died on cattle, and 214 small ruminants died because of infection. But then, thanks to the support of the international organization, FAO, United Nations, EIA, enabled authorities to control the spread and allowed the authorities to vaccinate animals, and more than 700,000 animals were vaccinated, stopping the outbreak. In Uganda, 2022-2023, as well, we had first of all an unusual heavy rains from September to November. Then we have cases in livestock with abortions, very high rate of abortions. But then the Rift Valley infection hit the human being, and common symptoms include the fever, general weakness, joint pain, etc. Passing to Kenya, 2023-2024, again, heavy rain followed by abortions, symptoms, high fever, and so on in livestock. And we had 132 samples positive to Rift Valley fever infection virus. But in humans, we had in 2023-2024 outbreaks, 6 cases were confirmed. So, following this description of the outbreaks, we will see similarities and differences between Western African and Eastern African countries. So it appears, looking at the trend of the number of the events reported by IMPRESS, that there was a sort of reduction. The trend appears to be negative. But if we look in a more wide period of time, we see that the Rift Valley fever outbreak occur at increasing rate. And that has been demonstrated in Mauritania. You can see that from 2010 and 2022, we had about 5 severe outbreaks in 12 years. And also in Uganda, we had severe outbreaks from 2016 and 2024. So it appears that the frequency of the outbreaks are increasing. You know that historically speaking, when I was a student in the university, has been said that the outbreaks of Rift Valley fever occurred every 5-10 years. Then it seems that things are changing. Again, case fatality rate. It seems that the case fatality rate differs between the two regions. You see in Western countries, the fatality rates are 20-30%, while in the Eastern countries are 30-40 and more, the case fatality rate.
Sorry, Giovanni, 1 minute more.
One.
We can make it 2 if you want.
1 minute. Okay.
Please.
The occurrence period of Rift Valley fever outbreaks also appears to be different depending on the raining season. We have, you see the purple area, and you can see that in the Western country, the outbreaks occurred between January and April, while in the Eastern country, the peak of the outbreak are September and October. This is a wrong slides because the cattle were more involved in the Eastern countries, whereas camels are more involved in the Western countries. Both areas following profession are most involved. In both areas, breeders, family members with handled animals, butchers, slaughters, individuals responsible for slaughtering animals are the most people involved in clinical, in disease of Rift Valley fever. So I go this one. There are some questions not yet answered. The first one is 2 main hypotheses have been advanced on the endemic cycle. How I go this one. There is a comparative less understanding on the viral maintenance dynamics during the quiescent years of the endemic areas. There are 2 hypotheses have been advanced on explaining these, what happened during the interepidemic period. One is the transovarial transmission between occurring on Aedes mosquitoes, and the other one is the cryptic mosquito host infection cycle, which involved also the wild species like rodents and bats. This is the 2 hypotheses to try to explain how and why the Rift Valley fever can maintain during the overwinter or the interepidemic period. The theory of the vertical transmission is losing consensus, and now it's more the overwintering through adult mosquitoes and the involvement of other species, wild species, has been having more consensus. Risk of introduction, okay, and you know that the EFSA published a document where it said that the overall risk of Rift Valley fever introduction in Europe is very, very low, both through the vector pathway and through the animal pathway. However, in the same document, they said that the cool experience of wild distributed mosquito species in Europe has shown high level of competence for transmission of Rift Valley fever. So we see here also a study conducted by Siluma et al. Demonstrated that the increasing frequency of small Rift Valley fever clusters in previously unaffected area has been demonstrated to be associated with a combination of two main factors: higher temperature, and rainfall. You see in the two graphs below the temperature of Europe in the last 20 years increased about 2 degrees. And in the left side, there are two pictures from 3 weeks ago in Italy, flooding in Emilia-Romagna. So according to this map also, if you look at the purple area, we see that Europe, according to this map, July represents the month with highest spillover values for European countries. So, conclusions. Rift Valley fever is currently a growing health problem in Africa. And despite the One Health approach being applied diligently, consistently by the national and local authorities, outbreaks of Rift Valley fever continue to occur with increasing frequency, impacting the most vulnerable social strata. It appears that information, communication, and education are not effectively reaching the pastoral community. Greater proximity and understanding of the needs of this low-resource community are necessary to make the undertaken measure more effective. Concerning the risk of Rift Valley fever introduction to Europe, the rapid and ongoing changes in the ecosystem due to the rising temperature and the increased frequency of the extreme weather condition are making the continent increasingly suitable to the establishment and spread of the virus. It is crucial for European nations to be prepared to quickly recognize any potential entry of the pathogen into the continent. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Excellent presentation. If you can come here and take a seat, maybe a question to answer. If someone from the room wants to ask a question to our participant, to Giovanni, for this presentation, please, Germán.
Thank you very much for this interesting and comprehensive presentation of the situation of Rift Valley fever. That is one of the main worries diseases, at least to me. You said that this is taken, I think, from the EFSA opinion, the maps, that is the July, the month of...
No. The one was a paper published in the 2024.
Yeah. The thing is, in the EFSA opinion of 2020, I think they described the main problem or the main gap that could allow this incursion into Europe, the transport of infected eggs, because this is vertical transmission in this virus, it seems they remain infected in the egg, so
the vertical transmission, I said that is losing consensus. Why? Because it was observed in Aedes McIntoshi, and in the field. However, when laboratories try to replicate this event, that was unsuccessful. So there was only one case of very few cases. So now the researcher and we are not anymore confident in giving so much importance to this event. That's why now the hypothesis is more on overwintering through adult mosquitoes or the intervention of wild species like rats, rodents, bats, and so on. Or also a very low undetectable cycle between livestock and virus.
Thank you. Any other question in the assistance? please. There is someone at the bottom. Yeah, now. Yeah, at the bottom, there, at the end. Au fond. Sorry.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this brilliant presentation about Rift Valley fever, because I'm very happy to hear this, because I'm from Congo, and Congo is a neighboring country to Burundi, Kenya, and all those countries that are being cited here. It is the Eastern African community, actually. And I've been thinking about something. I say, what do you think about the idea of supporting these countries? Because we have seen together that one of the main problems here is the response capacity of those countries. And one of the main bottlenecks to this is the funding issues. They are, most of them, poor countries with very, very low budget dedicated to health issues and even outbreak preparedness. So what do you think if we capitalize the opportunity of the pandemic fund? We as European Union, build the capacity of those countries in preparing very good projects so that they may profit from the pandemic fund. Because the pandemic fund is there, is a lot of money, but it is not being used. The money is there, and the conditionalities to accessing that money are very hard, and countries need to prepare very good folder to access that money. So I would suggest that maybe we build a plan for expertise exchange, maybe science and technology transfer from north to south, so that those countries may have the capacity to build very good folders to request funding from the pandemic fund. So I don't know what you think accordingly. Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Well, my experience is most on Northern African countries, especially on Mauritania. And I've seen that one of the big problems in these countries is they have the capacity, they have the skill. They are very good in the lab. They put in place a very, very good surveillance program involving sentinel animals and everything. And also, in the laboratories, they have a very modern equipment. However, when I was there, these equipments were there without, they didn't use this equipment because they broke and they don't have any possibility of buying, of having the what do you call this, to readjust to the broken equipment, because the companies were not there, and it's very difficult to have this opportunity. So they've been there without any more. They couldn't use it. So the thing is that yes, technical instruments it's good, but also they should be accompanied by a lot of other things, like the companies should be present in the territories, and they should assist these countries and these laboratories. Otherwise, it's useless to have this modern equipment if you can maintain this equipment working and functional.
Thank you. Maybe last question. If no one from the assistance has a question, I will ask you directly, Giovanni, if possible. So you highlighted the risk for Europe in terms of introduction of Rift Valley fever and the frequency of the outbreaks that are increasing. What's, in your view, what's your suggestion in terms of research that should be implemented, the lack of knowledge? What do you suggest also for the CVOs and the policymakers who are present with us?
Well, I mean, we have different areas that we can face. then talking about laboratories, and you have seen that camels in Mauritania have been tested using RT-PCR rather than IgM ELISA. Why? Because the IgM ELISA is not the one in the market is not working for camel species. So one of the most important is to have a serological test for testing IgM, detecting IgM in camel species, and this is one of the main target of the European reference laboratories. And also the good thing is that to have also on the area of diagnostic, to have diagnostic test on the field to be used in the field. And there was later a good paper on a pen-side test, which can be applied directly in the field, and working quite well, done by the CIRAD people and IDVET. And this is the gaps that in next future could be filled. But then regarding the cycle, yes, we have to know why and how the cycle can be maintained during the interepidemic period, and at the moment we don't have any good answer to explain to explain this occurrence.
Thank you very much. So we close this session on Rift Valley fever. We hope that you found this presentation as informative and engaging as we wanted it to be, due to the high risk of Rift Valley fever also. And before closing, please, now it's time for the coffee break, but please, I remind you to have a look at the posters. Please do vote. You will be able to vote only to the posters of the authors who are with us in this room. So one of you will have an award this evening at 6. So please do it now and take the opportunity and exchange with their authors using the time of the coffee break. So thank you very much.